Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 3 episodes for you this morning. This episode has 4 articles in it, and all the URLs are in the description of the video. The first one is off of Zero Hedge, and it says DNC National Guard Chief fired days before Trump inauguration. The timing is extremely unusual. It doesn't make sense to can the general in the middle of an active deployment, rages D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, Democrat, after Major General Errol R. Schwartz, who heads the D.C. National Guard and is an integral part of overseeing the inauguration, has been ordered removed from command effective January the 20th at 12:01 p.m., just as Donald Trump is sworn in as president. As the Washington Post reports, Major General Errol R. Schwartz, in the midst of the presidential ceremony, classified as a national special security event. His troops are deployed to help protect the nation's capital during an inauguration he has spent months helping to plan. The timing is extremely unusual, Schwartz said in an interview Friday morning, confirming a memo announcing his ouster obtained by the Washington Post. During the inauguration, Schwartz would command not only the members of the D.C. Guard, but also an additional 5,000 unarmed troops sent in from across the country to help. He also would oversee military air support, protecting the nation's capital during the inauguration. On the street, Schwartz, who turned 65 in October, said, "I'll see them off, but I won't be able to welcome them back to the armory." He said, "Plan to leave a mission in the middle of a battle." Schwartz, who was appointed to head the Guard by President George W. Bush in 2008, maintained the position through President Obama's 2 terms. He said his orders came from the Pentagon, but that he doesn't know who made the decision. D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, Democrat, blasted the decision to remove Schwartz, especially on Inauguration Day. "It doesn't make sense to can the general in the middle of an active deployment," Mendelson said. He added that Schwartz's sudden departure would be a long-term loss for the district. He's been really good at working with the community, and my impression was that he was good for the Guard. States where the governor appoints the National Guard commander in the district that the president. Schwartz said that he has not been told why he was asked to step down. "I'm a soldier," he said, noting that he was following orders and has no regrets. "I'm a presidential appointee. Therefore, the president has the power to remove me." This is just another part of Is this just another part of Obama's smooth transition? Or is something even more sinister at work here, since we already know that anti-Trump activists are planning the biggest protest in U.S. history on the day of the inauguration? As we previously noted, radical leftists are planning to make January the 20th the most chaotic inauguration day in American history. Their stated goal is to disrupt the inauguration festivities as much as possible, and they are planning a wide range of actions to achieve that stated goal. Some of the more moderate groups are using terms such as civil resistance and civil disobedience, but others are openly talking about blockades, jumping barricades, throwing projectiles, and citywide paralysis. My hope is that all of their efforts will turn out to be a big flop, but it's important to understand that these groups are well-funded, highly organized, and extremely motivated. The election of Donald Trump has been perhaps the single most galvanizing moment for the radical left in modern American history, and they are working very hard to turn January the 20th into a major political statement. In fact, just recently, one activist group took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. Journalists, scientists, entertainers, and other prominent voices took out a full-page call to action in the New York Times on Wednesday, making clear their rejection of President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence with the simple message, "No. Stop the Trump-Pence regime before it starts. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America," the ad states. followed by a list of signatories that include scholar Cornel West, author Alice Walker, Chase Iron Eyes of the Standing Rock Sioux, educator Bill Ayers, poet Saul Williams, CNN's Mark Lamont Hill, Carl Dix of the Communist Party USA, and numerous others. People to refusefascism.org, and it asserted that Trump must be stopped whether he was elected or not. Trump promises to inflict repression and suffering on people in this country, to deport millions, to increase violence of nuclear weapons on people across the globe, and to inflict catastrophes upon the planet itself. He has assembled a cabinet of Christian fundamentalists, fanatics, warmongers, racists, science deniers. No, his regime must not be allowed to consolidate. We refuse to accept a fascist America. That's how the If you go to refusefascism.org, you'll discover that the protests that they're organizing in Washington, D.C. will begin on January 14th. They say that they want to stop the Trump-Pence regime before it starts, and they hope to have protests going every day and every night without interruption through at least January the 20th. Another group that plans to kick things off on January the 14th is Disrupt J20. Of course, that is short for Disrupt January the 20th. If you go to their official website, you will find a long slate of events that have already been scheduled. And there's a link in this that you can go to their website if you choose to. It says, according to the Legbra Carefor, a spokesperson for Disrupt J20, one of the goals of this group is to block major transportation routes into and throughout our nation's capital. About the fact that they literally want to shut down the inauguration. We're planning to shut down the inauguration. That's the short of it, he says. We're pretty literal about that. We're trying to create citywide paralysis on a level that I don't think has been seen in D.C. before. We're trying to shut down pretty much every ingress into the city, as well as every checkpoint around the actual inauguration parade route. If Carefor and his fellow conspirators are able to actually accomplish that, it truly would be unprecedented. And while Disrupt J20 is not publicly advocating violence, they are not exactly discouraging it either. Carefor says Disrupt J20 has no publicly announced plans to jump barricades along the inauguration parade route or throw projectiles at the new president, but that autonomous direct actions are encouraged. On specific stuff we're doing like that, mostly because it would be illegal. But yeah, it will get pretty crazy, I expect, he says. Have fun, I say. That we have seen in Baltimore, Ferguson, Charlotte, and many other communities around the nation in recent years. I hope the authorities are taking these threats quite seriously. Won the election, many conservatives seem to think that the war was won. But the truth of the matter is that many of the left were completely blindsided by Trump's surprise victory, and now they are fully awake and they are gearing up for battle like never before. And these protests are not going to end on January the 20th. In fact, abortion advocates are hoping to get close to 1 million women into Washington, D.C. on the day following the inauguration to protest for abortion rights. Filmmaker Michael Moore is hoping that this march will be the beginning of 100 days of resistance against the Trump presidency. Filmmaker and liberal icon Michael Moore has announced his plans to attend the Women's March on Washington to protest Donald Trump's inauguration later this month, and he's called for liberals to go further by staging protests, acts of resistance through the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. In an appearance this week on MSNBC's The Last Word, the 62-year-old Trumpland and Fahrenheit 9/11 director made a call to arms to those opposed to Trump's presidency to join Women's March on Washington, scheduled for January the 21st, the day after the presidential inauguration. It's important that everybody go there, Morse told MSNBC's Ari Melber. Of course, it's easy to imagine how all of this could spiral wildly out of control. If Trump cracks down on these protests really hard in an attempt to restore law and order, that could end up sparking a dramatic backlash against his police state tactics. And if the protests become even bigger and more violent, Trump could respond by cracking down even more harshly. Let's hope for some really cold weather in D.C. at the end of January so that it's possible get discouraged and stay home. Violent protests, blockades, and riots aren't going to solve anything, and they could easily open fresh wounds in a nation that's becoming more divided with each passing day. Next article I have for you is off of Conservative Tribune, and it says, he did it. Mexico comes to the table, tells Trump they'll discuss the wall. Every ludicrous doomsday theory liberals spouted about President-elect Donald Trump prior to his election in November has begun to unravel, including the one about him potentially damaging America's relationship with our neighbors. As an example, consider what Mexico's new Foreign Relations Secretary, Luis, said this week. He said his country isn't negotiate changes to the North American Free Trade Agreement. It wants to start talks as soon as possible, the Associated Press reported. And here was the kicker. He also said Mexico is willing to negotiate over Trump's plan to build a border wall. Apparently, predicting the future is not a liberal strong suit. During a televised address last Wednesday, the same day Vidaguerre was tapped to serve as the Foreign Relations Secretary, Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto the importance of negotiations. With the change of government in the United States on the 20th of January, the instructions for Secretary Vidaguerre is to accelerate dialogue and contact so that from the first day of the from the first day, the basis for building a constructive work relationship can be established, he said, as noted by the UK Guardian. And there's some video in this if you wanted to take a look at that. And the article continues. It says, moreover, according to Robert Costa, a reporter for the Washington Post, Trump and his team strongly believed that the selection of Vidaguerre as the foreign relations minister would serve greatly to their benefit vis-a-vis building the wall. When I asked one top source about Mexico and the wall, the source said this story is most important one of the week, said Robert Costa, and there is a and he also has another quote here. It says, the way Trump people are talking about the wall behind the scenes, we can work with Luis Vidaguerre, force Congress to get the project started. However, did not mean the negotiations would be easy. We will negotiate with great confidence in ourselves, without fear, knowing how important Mexico is for the United States in economic, social, and political terms, Vidaguerre said Monday during opening remarks at the 28th annual meeting of the ambassadors and consuls, according to Business Insiders. Still, who would have thought that one day Mexico itself would voluntarily come to the table for negotiations? Certainly not liberals. And the next one is also about Mexico, and it's off Liberty Writers. It says, Mexico just broke. Look what they begged Donald Trump to do for them. Remember when Donald Trump promised all of us that he was going to negotiate NAFTA? Yeah, well, get ready for some incredible news. Mexico is now begging him to negotiate. You see, the new Foreign Relations Secretary of Mexico, Luis Vidaguerre, is apparently terrified that Mexico will be jobless thanks to Trump promising to tax anything they send here. After seeing all the car companies coming back, he's ready to pretty much do anything to win back the U.S.'s favor. Well, almost anything. He wants Trump to meet with him immediately, but is also still refusing to pay for the damn wall. Vidaguerre told Mexican TV there are no circumstances, not even the best possible trade deal, investments, support, which would justify taking a step that would violate the dignity of Mexicans to such an extent. Oh, sure, you say that now, but let's just wait and see what Donald Trump has in store next. My prediction, America is getting a big, beautiful wall. If you think it's awesome that Trump has already put Mexico right where he wants them before he even makes it into office, then show some support and share this everywhere. If you want to take a look at that. Then the final one in this episode is off Conservative Tribune. It says, report, Trump's doing it. U.S. Embassy to move to Jerusalem. Speculated that President-elect Donald Trump would move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in recognition of that city historically being the capital of the Jewish nation. According to a report from CNN, it appears as though that move was just about to happen, as the incoming Trump team has reportedly informed allies in the region that they were pushing ahead with the move despite an outcry from Arab and Muslim nations. Officials in Israel have speculated that the move would happen as early as May the 24th, the Israeli Jerusalem Day holiday that celebrates the reunification of the city following the 1967 Six-Day War that saw Israel effectively push back a coordinated attack by several Arab nations in the region. The Jerusalem Post reported that Palestinian Authority President Mohammed Abbas sent a letter to Trump urging him not to go through with his plan to move the embassy, citing potential consequences. The president asked the American president-elect to not take this step, moving the embassy, as it will have destructive consequences on the peace process, the two-state solution, and the safety and security of the region, read a paraphrased portion of the letter as reported by the official PA news outlet WAFA. The probable move was also criticized by outgoing Secretary of State John Kerry, who claimed that the planned relocation of the embassy to Jerusalem would cause an absolute explosion in the region. And there's video in this if you want to pull that up to take a look at that. Continues, it says the Associated Press checked into what some of those consequences could be and what exactly an absolute explosion in the region would look like if the embassy were moved. And while some of the controversy may be overblown, there could be some serious ramifications if emotions are permitted to rule. Palestinians would, of course, be upset, as they claim Jerusalem as their own capital and would view the U.S. Embassy being moved there as recognition of Israel's claim to the city. They have essentially threatened to end all negotiations regarding a peaceful solution to the issue, have intimated that further attacks could be forthcoming, and insinuated that they would shift the entire financial burden for all Palestinians back to the Israeli government, which serves as sort of a custodian over the sacred Islamic sites in Jerusalem and the West Bank, warned that moving the embassy would be crossing a red line that would inflame the Arab and Muslim world, that such a move would undermine its efforts at maintaining peaceful relations and alliances with both U.S. Other Arab and Muslim nations, speaking through representatives of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, said the move would be a huge setback to the potential two-state solution peace process, and were hopeful that Trump will reconsider the move so as not to upset Muslim populations. By all accounts, Trump appeared to be serious about making good on his campaign promise to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel by moving the U.S. Embassy there, and we are fully in support of that move. As for the threats of consequences and repercussions for the move, while they may be serious, it is difficult to place much stock in them, given the extreme opposition to the very existence of Israel by many Arab and Muslim nations, and the fact that they won't be satisfied until the entire country and its population are wiped off the face of the earth, no matter where the capital or the embassies of allies are located. So there you have the first episode this morning. If you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it around on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Be sure and subscribe. There's a little bell beside that subscribe button. If you click that, there'll be a little box in there, and that will give you the email alerts every time I put a show up, and that's going to keep you informed. We'll see you in the next episode.